I like that. One of my heroes is the late Glenn Passy, 62 national champion, NC2A Division I discus. When I first met him, May 21st, 1988, that's when we first shook hands. I'd heard of him before, but he said, I didn't lift like you guys, which I thought, couldn't hear him at the time. He was told that you needed to have a clean and press, body weight clean and press, body weight snatch, and then clean and jerk about 20 pounds more than you weighed. So he said, well, if that's all I need to be elite, well, that's what I'm going to do. And so in the fall, he would take as many workouts it would take to clean and press, body weight, snatch, body weight, and clean and jerk 20 pounds. And then he would stop lifting. And he would test himself every so often. If it took him 2 workouts to get back to those numbers, it was 2. Later, it was once a month. And I've told that to people, and their 100% reaction is this. That's stupid. That's crazy. He was the national champion in the discus who weighed 178 pounds and threw as far as I did. So why aren't we listening to this guy? So his whole nervous system just threw the discus. His nervous system didn't have to learn the decline press, the French press, the trap bar deadlift, the throw in the lift of the day. His body knew the discus throw and then this other stuff that made him strong. Caveat, asterisk at the bottom of the page. He was raised on a milk farm. In the summer, he did farmer walks all day and threw hay bales up onto a loft. So his off-season training was smarter than just about everybody listening, including me. Because if you're doing farmer walks and throwing hay bales, 40-pound hay bales for a couple hours a day, you pretty much have covered your GPP.
Before we get to the show today, I wanted to mention a really cool item that is available now from our sponsor, simplyfaster.com, in their store. That item is Exogen Premium Wearable Resistance. Exogen is a series of tight-fitting sleeves along with uniquely shaped fusiform weights that strap directly onto those sleeves. So what I mean is you can have shin sleeves, arm sleeves, shorts, and a vest, and you can strap these uniquely fusiform shaped weights. They're light in nature, 100, 200 grams, that strap on in a way that allows you not only to resist movement very specifically, but also add fine-tuned elements of rotation to that resistance. So this is the next level of wearable resistance. You may have heard this from back long ago on the show, Hank Kreinhoff talking about it, to recently Chris Korfist, sprint coach, talking about it. This is the next level in premium wearable resistance. I've used it myself. I love it. I love not only the way it feels and the way you feel form and technique change. It's like combining technique with power. And so often we just think about weighted vests as just pure force, pure downward gravity loaded resistance. This is the ultimate combination of technique with power. And it shows up in things like Chris Korfist being able to take time off an athlete's 10-meter fly by putting the sleeves just on one side of the body, an ipsilateral resistance. We're using the body's own systems, fine-tuning it. And that's what this does. It allows you as the coach or an athlete to create, explore, and fine-tune the way that the resistance is rotationally impacting the body. This is next level stuff, and I know you'll love it. So you can check that out in the Simply Faster store. Head on over to simplyfaster.com. That's simply with an I, faster.com, and get your Exogen gear today. Something that I need to return to fairly regularly as a coach and even in my own training, personal training as an athlete, is returning to the simple things that I know work and to cut out or declutter the complexity and get back to a minimalistic approach. To help me do that, something I often do is get to the writings of great coaches like Dan John, coaches who have been around for a long time and not only can tell you what's important and what's not, but they can also craft a story around it. And it's those stories that really help me to remember and to understand and just to become better at my craft. Dan John is basically a household name if you are in the sports performance industry. He's been a strength coach, a track coach, a master's track athlete, a best-selling author, and just all-around educator of having a better process in the art of training. Last time on the show, in episode 96, Dan went into a lot of concepts on the weight room, easy strength-oriented concepts. There was a great anecdote that I will always remember about him training a girl to a high level of shot put proficiency in track and field using a rock. So nothing is ever an excuse. I love the stories and anecdotes that Dan gives. This podcast covers several topics, some of which would include things like training elasticity and kettlebells and training robustness in athletes and the ability to give them multiple strategies to get the job done. But one of the overarching things that Dan discusses with us is really the art of relaxation. If you're a track and field coach, or if you're coaching an athlete to throw a discus 200 feet, you can't just do that through maximal tension. There is a relaxation, there is a whipping action, there is timing. But that's not just the discus, that's many sports skills, a volleyball serve, swinging a baseball bat. All of these things require not just strength, but the art of coaching and teaching the athlete to be a fluid machine and not just use a raw tension as their only option. Dan covers this not only in coaching sports skills through his extensive experience as a track and field coach, but also things that you can do in the weight room to help athletes achieve a more optimal level of tension, to perceive their bodies better, and just to have a greater experience in the process of lifting. Really teaching athletes to be fluid machines is not just a magic exercise here and there. It's kind of a lifestyle. And so hearing the stories and wisdom of Dan in the coaching medium, whether you're a track coach, a strength coach, a sport coach, an athlete, wherever you are on that spectrum, this podcast has so much wisdom, and I always enjoy talking to Dan. These podcasts are always ones that I pick up so many things for myself personally, and I know you're going to love it. Let's get on to the show. So I wanted to ask you, so you mentioned in the new version of Easy Strength, and the things that you went back and you were looking at the old book, you're like, this is really good. Is that what you were talking about, like the quadrants and the lift a day and or conditioning, or is there other things that you were highlighting that you really, I'd be curious as to what you really thought shown out of that book that maybe wasn't appreciated as much, or what do you think about that?
Quadrant one, now that's little kids, okay? I'm a big believer that when you work with little kids, and that would be up to about age 15 or so, as many sports and games as they can possibly play, they need to learn how to ride a bicycle. They need to learn how to swim. I would suggest they learn how to play chess and a few other things. But at that age, Hebert, Hebert, was this great, about 100 years ago, this guy, he saw a volcano go off, and he went in as a ship captain and saved people. He picked up survivors. And while he was picking up survivors, he noticed certain things about the survivors. They could climb walls, they could swim, they could run, they could sprint. And the people who didn't survive, boom, boom, boom. So he came up with this idea of exercise. You should know how to fight. You should know how to, play tag, play hide and go seek. That's the section on quadrant one that I wrote. Well, then Pavel came in and had a whole list of strength exercises you should teach youth. I didn't appreciate that list. I didn't appreciate the plank, the goblet squat, that kind of thing. I didn't appreciate it enough at the time. The push-up, those kinds of things, hanging from a bar up to pull-ups. I didn't appreciate it enough. I think I was sometimes, you kind of dance down this little, and I missed. There's a couple times in the book, our discussion on plyometrics. I think the chapter's called Plyometrics Demystified. And if you know my work, I'm not a huge fan of plyos at all. I mean, I just, I still go back to the original research, and it says you need to be a lot stronger before you start them. I need to pause and make sure your listeners hear me. When I coach, I coach the hands and feet, try to make them like mini trampolines, a lot of bounce to the hands and feet, the knees and ankles, like a BMX bicycle, you need a lot of balance, and then you need to be able to lean in. And if you lean in too far, you got to be able to pull it out. And that's why I love, things like skating drills where you drive the ears way over to pull yourself on balance and get yourself back. Okay. The shoulders and the hips, I use the old Chinese medicine term, the 4 knots, K-N-O-T, tight enough to stay on, loose enough that you can unstring them. Okay. I see why plyos have value. My knock is that you got some chubby little kid who's, eats McDonald's and mac and cheese 7 times a day, and he's doing bouncing exercises. Every second you keep a kid away from their event is, my throwers never do plyos, but we outthrow your throwers probably 10 to 20 to 1 or more, maybe 100 to 1 in some cases. For every throw your guys take, mine will take 99. And I think that is going to make them throw farther than skipping A drill, B drill, whatever. butt kickers. Great. Butt kickers are a great warm-up. I get it. High knees are great. But I'd much rather have my throwers throwing. And I like the way Pavel came around that. As in everything in track and field, and the interesting thing about plyos, the word was invented by Fred Wilt, the guy who used to do Track Technique magazine, long before you were born, my young friend. But Pat Masdorf.
Oh, yeah. He was
one of the last guys to break the high jump world record with the straddle. He's the person who really brought plyometrics into America. And then the Europeans took it and then made it all fancy. We Americans have this love affair with dressed up fancy programs that look so good on a spreadsheet or that handout that you give your athletes, and it's all crap. You want your throwers to throw far, snatch and power clean. Throw the discus, throw the shot, throw the hammer, whatever it is. Do that for 8 years, get back to me. They'll be really, really good. Now, you're going to ask about what mesocycle, and I'll have to slap you across the face. Because until they're throwing over 200, 210, we don't need to worry about the small details. I went to Utah State, very proud of that. About a decade ago, their coach, a good friend of mine, he was our designated driver when I was in college, Greg, asked me to talk to some of the throwers. And I'm talking to him, and it's like, and I go, I hate to say this, but, you don't seem strong. Well, and the guy argued with me, and he's going, well, what I'm trying to do is and he had the meso, micro. The kid threw 145 as a senior. Well, I threw 190 as a senior. I was stronger than him in every single lift. He was taller and longer than me. I threw 45 feet. Now, I don't know if you know about track and field, but in the throwing events, if you throw 45 feet farther than somebody else, write this down. That's a long ways, okay? Would not listen to me because what I was saying wasn't sexy enough. And he never got better. But it was all, the number of silly exercises he did, it was ridiculous. He had prehab exercises for injuries he hadn't yet gotten. All this stuff. He foam rolled for like 20 minutes. During your foam rolling, why don't you go power clean instead? Sorry. That chapter, plyometrics demystified, that is one that I go back and I look at and it's like, yeah, that was pretty good. And we'll do a better job this time.
Cool. I'll have to go back and read that as well. And I do, as I've gone along as a coach too, I used to be, if you look at someone who's the definition of someone who can do like the high crazy plyos, I have been that as an athlete. I'm much more of a kangaroo than anything else. But I also have found that if I simplify it down, I'd rather just play a game of basketball and try to do dunks at the end for the most part than try to do, because I've actually gotten in trouble as an athlete, and I think I never imposed on my athletes long enough to see the negative of just too many plyos over a long period of time. So I get it. And these days I try to have a lot more small, quicker ground contacts, just work the smaller end of it. But
and I like what you said. I remember years ago, one of our graduates at Utah State University, LJ Sylvester, 4-time Olympian, he was talking and he said, if you're going to get in shape, roll out a basketball, let the guys play basketball, play half court for half an hour. They'll run, they'll jump, they'll laugh, they'll get everything done. You got the ankle issue. Sure, I got that. But generally, they're going to get a workout in. My coach at Utah State, Ralph Mon, was a great believer in a game called handball. He thought handball was the perfect off-season training program because, you moved and you had fun. And when you went out, you had to put your name on who won and who lost. So maybe you went and practice. I don't disagree with you. With my throwers, we do almost zero conditioning. But on Friday, we always play a game. We play tag American football, play soccer with those, those big Bosu balls, those big, the one Dwight Schrute is sitting on in the office.
Oh, yeah. This is like the physio ball, like the giant physio balls.
Yeah. Play soccer with those.
Awesome.
Get a soccer game with those. Do you know Ultimate Frisbee?
Oh, I used to have my track team play that religiously, and they revolted because I was so good, and they liked Ultimate Football more. But yeah.
Okay, so with my throwers, I give them a 4-pound Dynamax ball. It's very important it's a Dynamax because it has to be a soft catch ball. Otherwise, fingers are going to be an issue because there's a lot of blind passes and stuff. But you play same rules as Ultimate, but with a 4-pound ball and a big Dynamax ball, And so you got these kids running up and down the field, laughing the whole time. And then what I notice when I do that is other kids watch the track team having a lot of fun, and they say, "Coach, can I do this?" Yes, you can. And then they find out that these are the throwers, and then next week I have a couple more. I got 2 more kids. Bulk of the time, not going to be a talent. Sometimes state champion. You never know.
Yeah, I like what you said about periodization and the kid who's trying everything. And in some ways, I was that kid, because it's like I didn't have the talent that a lot of people did. So it's like, oh, what can I do to bridge that gap? And then you start to get ridiculous with it, because you hope that this magic exercise and that magic exercise is going to bridge that gap. And sometimes, I mean, I think I had some plyos and lifts that did really help. But at some point, it also just gets down to, well, just do the thing. And you have to just be a badass at the thing. And because if you get too far away from that, it's just not going to happen for you.
Right. And there are times, Joel, I think that over conditioning gets rid of the snap, the stretch reflex. So you got the athlete who's got a bigger engine than mine, but when they throw the discus, they're doing a freaking incline fly. It's not a rubber band snap. It's not a bow and arrow. It's a and you can't the discus very far. Funny thing is, it will feel like you're throwing far, but it won't go far. Because when you set things up in the discus shot, hammer, javelin, the jumps, I'd even say the hurdles for sure, probably the sprint world. When you set the body up in the right potion, miracles happen. And that's when the effortless marks come from you. Most throwers I know have one of 2 kinds of stories. It's either the hangover story or the I was going to foul it felt so good story. I know at least 2 world records that were set when the person was so hungover they could barely move. And I think part of the reason the hangover rule happens is because when you have no expectations, you let things happen. And what the one thrower, so remain nameless, said is that the warm-ups felt kind of good. And then as he was getting ready, the meet director walked over and said, "We got some big wins coming in." And when the winds came in, poof, new world record.
Wow.
And then the other one is the effortless throw. What's happened to me, I'll tell you my story. San Jose State, I throw the discus, and it just didn't feel like I did anything. And I was going to foul it until I heard this huge noise. And I realized they were noising for me. And so I kept the throw, and it was my lifetime best throw. But I was going to foul it because was too easy, you know. But if you don't mind me taking this into life, when I talk to young people, they always have these elaborate plans for meeting the love of their life. Always these high, well, after I get my doctorate in, the French Renaissance cuisine, then I'm going to go to law school, become a doctor, be an astronaut. And then I will do an active search on this girl that 5 years later, how'd you guys meet? We met at a party. I was drunk. Life is very much effortless at its highest, and it's effortless. I think when in life, when things aren't a burden, very often it's the best. Like some of my funnest times in my life. Well, last week we had this blanket, and my grandson and granddaughter got on it, and I took them across they have a slick floor, and then I let it go, and I hammer through them into a carpeted area. And those guys, I could have done that 10,000 times. And I got to say, I don't want to get emotional, but it was like one of the greatest moments of my life. What were you doing? I put my grandkids on a blanket and I threw them. There was no toys. There was no internet. There was yeah. So I think that's one of the reasons I think it's so good to be a track and field athlete. Sorry, folks, for throwing my sport in there, but you get that chance by yourself to discover yourself.
I agree completely. And it's like, cause it's just you and the high jump, it's you and the discus. I couldn't agree more. I love this. Like, cause I think about, Well, one, I've been thinking about just how what makes children move differently than adults. You could say, they don't have compensations and this and that and their energy systems, but they don't have expectations unless the parent's crazy, but which, like, again, probably often happens, but they don't have an expectation for the movement. And then I think about, like my own PR in high jump was, okay, and this is where I was crazy, is it was like I had this formula, and it was like, okay, if I do this depth jump workout, 4 days later, I'm money. Like, I am good to go. Like, I'm super compensated and I'm all right. And then I did a lot of my own stuff in college. I kind of worked with my coach when I wasn't annoying him about whatever I wanted to do in my training. It was this weird symbiosis, but I did this. I thought I was going to jump on, like, I don't know, Saturday. And then I did this depth jump workout on, I guess it was Tuesday. And so here I am, and I realized after I did it, I was like, oh, wait, you're jumping Friday. And so this is just me. It's like, oh, well, I guess I'm not going to jump very well because I did it 3 days and I don't have 4 days to recover. And someone put my hair in like cornrows or something, and it just was this mess. And I remember that first like scissor jump over 5'8", I was like so far, like 6-8 inches over it. I'm like, yeah, today's going to be a good day. I just had no expectations. I wasn't expecting to do anything. And then the next day, I didn't have a very good triple jump. I didn't have a very good javelin. It wasn't like I don't know. And then my first and only dunk in a basketball game in high school, I missed 7 dunks probably. I don't know. I should count them. Probably missed 7 dunks because I would get the ball and I'd be going and I was like, oh, this is going to be it. And then just the forebrain takes over and just it's game over. And the only dunk I ever had, I remember I was doing warm-ups. It was my senior year and I wasn't even jumping that high. And I kind of dismissed the idea of getting a dunk in this game. I was like, I'll just play good and play hard. And then I remember it was like right after halftime, I stole a pass. I did not remember a thing. Like everything just went blank. And then I'm hanging from the rim, and the crowd's going nuts. And that's all I remember. And it's almost like I had to completely dismiss the idea that I was going to do it before my body just took over and said, okay, today's the day, Joel. You get to miss 7 dunks. And this is finally the breakthrough.
See, I would ask our listeners to break that story down and then apply that to coaching and athletic performance, because that is so true. I mean, half the time in my last book, I talk about the event that cost me the world record in the weight pentathlon. It was a cheese sandwich. I stepped into the ring. Do you mind a quick story?
Oh, please. Yeah.
Well, I had a great performance in the hammer and my shot was right on. And now I come to my strongest event, the discus. I step in the ring for my first throw. And this ring judge here says, what is that? And this ring judge says, it's a cheese sandwich. I didn't know we were going to get cheese sandwiches. Yeah, they have them over there for the officials. And the two of them were talking about where to get food for these cheese sandwiches. And that got into my head. And my wife was watching. She said, I could tell something went wrong. And I go, I sweared a little bit after the throw. And finally, on my third throw, I had to take a safe one because it was the worst 2 throws probably in my life. And the reason I bring up the story, and it ties into your story very well, is that the monkey brain, that's what I call it, that brain, part of my brain, the part that thinks is a monkey. It wants quick rewards, and it's stupid, and it likes to interrupt every chance it gets, and it destroys performance. That's why I'm such a big believer in meditation for athletes and myself, because you practice letting go. In fact, one of my meditations, I use 2. I have one is free, called One Moment Meditation. It's an app. It's 1 minute, and the other one is something called Brain.fm. That's a site. And in one of the meditation tapes, the woman, they always have British accents for some reason, tells you that if a thought comes in, just look at it and let it go. And I thought, that's stupid. And then, of course, I heard something and, let it go, So it's the art of practicing letting go. I really think that a true meditation might be as good as those extra 200 meters you were talking about. Because, practicing letting go and letting things happen, especially in track and field, because track and field is nothing but bows and arrows. When you high jump, you turn various parts of your body into a bow and arrow. And ideally, if you synchronize it enough, you rocket ship over the bar. When you throw the javelin, and by the way, your Jav Lab on your site is phenomenal. If you, in the javelin and the hammer especially, if the timing's right, the implement goes so much farther. The sum of the timing is right is so much better than the parts. It's weird, in fact. When you do it right, it's like magic. It's scary. Sadly, you vertical jumpers don't get to enjoy that because you always know how high you're going to go. But for the rest of us, man, it's just everybody has that story about my training was terrible. I had terrible lunch. I normally have 2 Twinkies. I only had 1. My dog barked at me, and I had my lifetime best. What happened? I don't know. But that's when that's when those 1,000 bows and arrows all shot you out of there.
Yeah, the throws, that was, I was like a kid in a candy shop when I started throwing javelin, because I had been trying to dunk and jump high over bars ever since I was like 11. And then I did at 21 and I pick up this spear that doesn't weigh anything, and I was pretty good at it. And it's like, that joy you get from the instant improvement. But I ended up kind of blowing up my elbow a little bit 2 years in, because I was like trying too hard, just like too much effort, just trying too hard to be good. And then I had surgery, and then back into my later 20s, I started throwing in meets again. I just remember the most beautiful thing about that event, even more so than high jumping, is I was a meet guy. Like I would throw that thing like 150, 165 in practice, and then I'd go to the meet, and it was like something took over my body, and it's like I'm the passive observer here throwing 190 or 200, and it's like what is happening? I mean, I remember the one of the last meets I threw, it was almost like I had so much of that X factor separation between my hips and my shoulders. I almost couldn't believe what was happening. I felt like my body was getting squeezed like a towel. And I was like, what is taking over my body right now? This is just insane. But it's just like, it's almost like this beauty, this connection with this thing that's inside you that knows how to do it. And that was one of my favorite things about that event. I need to start throwing again.
That is lovely. And that's exactly it. And so for me, what you just said is a foundational coaching point. So I need to get my throwers to a point that their effort, like playing a violin, it has to be the right amount. And I think that's the difficulty of being a coach. I think that's where things get difficult. And that's why I believe in such simple training programs. Lots of reps, obviously lots of throwing reps, but lots of different ways of approaching the throw.
Yeah.
Or the jumper. We play a lot more games. We have that one day at discus camp where if you're right-handed, you throw left-handed. If you're left-handed, you throw right-handed for the entire day. Starting at first thing in the morning, we go out and start doing our discus drills with the wrong hand. We call it goofy-handed. I'm going to have my discus. Well, by the end of the day, we got the discus throwers doing 360 and goes. That's a full extra turn the discus and then throw the discus left-handed. And of course, at the end of the day, my job is to say to them, remember at the beginning of the day, you couldn't throw, do anything? Yeah. Well, what happened? And that's what I want. I want that. Usually it's, they let it go and let it throw. I love that kind of thing because we do all these weird little drills with sticks and stuff and small rings, big rings. And what we just keep trying to do is get the athlete to think about overcoming this drill versus think about trying to kill the implement, But I love putting a bag behind the left foot of a right-handed discus thrower, a school bag, a gym bag, and have them jump over it. And they freak out at first. But then they realize that they jump over it every single time. And that's all of a sudden you just see everything just kind of ease up and calm down. And I think that's our job, is to make the complex simple.
I'd like to take a break from the show to share with you a significant pendulum that has swung in my own personal training practice. So between my mid-20s and mid-30s, I was this veritable pre-workout fiend. I was in this place where I absolutely had to have a pre-workout before every training session. And after just seeing kind of the adrenal response flatline that created, amongst other things, at age 35, I'd been sick of that idea for a few years. I hadn't been taking pre-workouts for a few years, and I had been starting to get into more of Logan Christopher's like mental training, hypnosis prior to training sessions. I love that so much, I started to get into the products of his company, Lost Empire Herbs. So the first herb formula that I got was the Phoenix formula. This is far different from that generic bottle of ginkgo biloba that you might see at the drugstore. As Logan says, these are not your grandfather's herbs. This earthy and immaculately well-sourced compound, my first dose of it, I felt this unique and subtle tingle through my whole body. And I instantly knew that I was onto something that was really going to change the way I looked at this portion of my training and well-being. Within 2 weeks of using the Phoenix formula, honestly, my lifts had gone up 10 to 15 pounds, my big lifts. Fast forward a few more months, and at age 35, I'd hit the highest vertical jump I had hit in really about the last 4 to 5 years. I know herbalism was a really big and important part of that, and it's a really big and important part of my life and well-being today. I love what Lost Empire Herbs is doing, and I'm thrilled to have them as a sponsor of this show since I'm a user and believer in their products, and as we live in this increasingly chemical-filled world, they shine such a bright light on using the power of nature to help us become stronger and more resilient human beings. So if you want to get a hold of this herbal supplementation to boost your own performance, head to lostempireherbs.com/justfly, and you can see my own personal top recommended herbs that I use, including Shilajit resin, as you may have heard Grant Fowler talk about on a recent show, and then get 15% off that purchase. So again, head to lostempireherbs.com/justfly, that's JUSTFLY, and you can go ahead and see my top recommended herbs and get 15% off your purchase. All right, let's get back to the show. Yeah, that's one of those things where, well, I'll say with the expectations, one of the things I noticed as a track coach and then just as a strength coach for swim athletes for a while was it's like, especially in the weight room, athletes would get to this point where they would associate that maybe they started lifting and then within 2 or 3 years they had gotten pretty strong and they were also swimming like a swim PR, like a good time. And then it's almost like this association that, well, I have to keep lifting more. I have to try harder to get a better time. And it's like, rather than teaching people just to let go a little bit, like to trust their body is going to get it done. And it's like, to me, a lot of it is the body language that you see once they get up to the bar and things like that. If it's like this, like I have to, I must, versus a lot of us, I think we throw our PRs, and maybe you even wrote something about this back in the day where it's like, it's almost like, remember back when you first hit those PRs, you didn't even have a plan exactly. It was just fun and it all came together. And then later in life, you tried to really sequence it all out and you couldn't do it. And I think about what people's attitudes become when it's no longer a letting go almost or a surrendering to the process versus forcing it, like putting your thumb down, like every time. And I've seen so much of that. And I felt like what I did was just trying to educate people that you don't have to force it, like just enjoy the process and it's going to take care of itself, and to let go a little bit.
I like that. One of my heroes is the late Glenn Passy, 62 national champion, NC2A Division I discus. When I first met him, May 21st, 1988, that's when we first shook hands. I'd heard of him before, but he said, I didn't lift like you guys, which I thought, couldn't hear him at the time. He was told that you needed to have a clean and press, body weight clean and press, body weight snatch, and then clean and jerk about 20 pounds more than you weighed. So he said, well, if that's all I need to be elite, well, that's what I'm going to do. And so in the fall, he would take as many workouts it would take to clean and press, body weight, snatch, body weight, and clean and jerk 20 pounds. And then he would stop lifting. And he would test himself every so often. If it took him 2 workouts to get back to those numbers, it was 2. Later, it was once a month. And I've told that to people, and their 100% reaction is this. That's stupid. That's crazy. He was the national champion, the discus, who weighed 178 pounds and threw as far as I did. So why aren't we listening to this guy? So his whole nervous system just threw the discus. His nervous system didn't have to learn the decline press, the French press, the trap bar deadlift, the throw in the lift of the day. His body knew the discus throw and then this other stuff that made him strong. Caveat, asterisk at the bottom of the page. He was raised on a milk farm. In the summer, he did farmer walks all day and threw hay bales up onto a loft. So his off-season training was smarter than just about everybody listening, including me. Because if you're doing farmer walks and throwing hay bales, 40-pound hay bales for a couple hours a day, you pretty much have covered your GPP. Yeah,
it's a great same but different, right? But for between, and when you're not weightlifting, doing like that work, it's probably like the ultimate off season for a strength-based athlete, I'd imagine, on some level.
So much smarter than crap I did. Yeah.
I used to do that when I was in college. I was working my way through college in the summer, and I did moving in the summer. And it's funny because I didn't like it took a while to click that was really important, like carrying a box up and down the stairs, like carrying a box every way you could think of, and different objects where you're working together with other people and you have a terrain to manage. It was more important training than I think I realized at the time, especially to take, done with track. It's June, okay, and now 3 months just doing this and not doing track and maybe playing basketball or disc golf with my friends. And that was a good off season.
How tired were you the first couple of weeks?
It was the first few days. I actually have a pretty good aerobic engine once I get going, but I think it was more the grip, like just being able to hold on to stuff. That's what it took a while to get that going up to speed, and being able to do that throughout the day. And then some of the heavy, awkward objects, the strength and the skill to lift those was what took a while.
The weird soreness, like when you're we call it leakage in the weight room. You can't have leakage when you're carrying a couch up a flight of stairs. You have to keep everything engaged. Otherwise, the couch will move, which will hit the wall and, and of course could hurt you. But no one cares about you because they're more worried about the couch and the wall. I think you're on to something. That's why if you read my work, it's my love affair with loaded carries. It's being J&J Moving, which is the company my family owned. Or what we call here in Salt Lake, Dumb and Dumber Moving Company. I got to tell you, helping somebody move in or move out of a house, going up and down that U-Haul, that truck, loading stuff. It is exhausting, and you're weirdly sore. And strangely, a couple weeks later, you throw the discus further. That's what loaded carries are. It's the ultimate in the business. We call it the WTF effect, the what the heck effect. It's where you did this drill and magically your performance improved. And don't try to figure out why. It's like, why does lifting weights make you throw farther? We've really never answered that. This is cutting edge work research from when that Stanford shot putter, Otis Chandler, defied his coach and started lifting weights and broke the world record in 1947 or something like that. We truly, our little scientists listening, show me how I throw farther when I lift weights. Show me is it mitochondria? We can make up things, but we really don't know. It's, for example, when you eat kimchi or sauerkraut, why does that, do certain things to your body? You can write all you want. We're never really sure. Yeah. I'm not ripping on science. I'm just saying we don't know everything.
Yeah, even I think when people talk about weights and transfer, you could make a lot of cases for or against. You could say, it trains the muscle, not the fascia, and it trains the this and XYZ and the nervous system a different way, and the inner muscle. You could get very complex for or against it, for whatever transfer you wanted. So I totally hear you. I agree. I like with the loaded carries, just not trying to analyze things too much sometimes, because I am problematic with that as a coach, because that's like I want to be like, oh, look at me explain this stuff, and I have to catch myself sometimes. I'm like, this athlete might be better off not knowing more as much as you want them to know about this movement right now. I have to tell myself that all the time.
Well, and I remember one time I was talking to a Finnish athlete, and I just read this massive thing for javelin throwers on all these medicine ball drills. By the way, and I think medicine ball drills, you said fascia, I think the medicine ball drills teach the body how to move better than most of the junk I do in the weight room. I said, boy, that's interesting. He goes, well, it's because the coach who wrote that article, all he had was medicine balls. He didn't have weights or anything else. And I'm like, that's exactly my life story. I have this phrase I use a lot called deprivation increases capacity. If you want to be a great throws coach, but you don't have a field to throw in and you don't have any javelin shots or discs, what are you going to do? I still want you to be my throws coach. By not having anything, you'll be a better coach because you have to outthink. When I was coaching football at this one school, we couldn't practice at the school. We had to take a bus ride. And when they rebuilt the school and put in a great practice facility, the football team tanked a bit. And one of the things I said, I go, in that bus ride, that's when I talked to my team. It was only 12, 15 minutes at the most, but I had 2 15-minute times a day to talk to my entire team. Okay, the game is on Thursday. We're checking out at noon. We need you on the bus. Bring food if you want. Here's our first 6 plays of the game. Here's what we're going to try. And then on the way back, I say, okay, here's the problem with practice today. It wasn't a bad thing. Not having a practice facility was a good thing. Deprivation increases capacity. And if you don't have a perfect facility, a perfect place, have you ever been to Jamaica?
I haven't. It's on the list, though.
Well, when you go to Jamaica, one of the first things you'll notice is that their training facilities are not the best in the world. Yet, I think the Jamaican sprinting team probably would do pretty well at the Utah State High School Championships. And we have some of the best track and field facilities in the world. Everybody here is, what do we call that? What do we call our tracks now? Rubberized, or whatever the phrase we use now. And every track meet has fully automatic timing, so you can watch that sophomore girl run a 23-second 100 meters. And the word run has air quotes. Sorry, that was snarky. Yeah, you go to these places. I was told one time about that. I had a picture of a Bulgarian weightlifter in one of my newsletters, and I got an email from a guy from Bulgaria, which is kind of cool. And he said that you don't know about this guy. I go, okay, obviously. He had no place to live. He lived in the gym because that's where he lived. He had no apartment. Really? And so you got this, world record holder, right? He was, deprivation increases capacity.
I love that. I was thinking it's one of those things where a lot of worlds can collide too. Like you could say the same thing with the body and food and fasting, and not ever giving yourself a chance to not intake calories or something like that. But
biggest mistake in my career. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, sorry. Because I my follow up actually was one of the best training years I had with the men's swim team at Cal was when our weight room there was something. It was the floor was like broken in the weight room because it wasn't built and strong enough to throw weights down. And I remember watching the throwers doing like 300 plus pound jerks on jerk blocks one day. They were all standing next to each other, and every time they threw the bar down on the jerk blocks, the whole floor would just go whoa, whoa, whoa. Like their heads where I felt like we're oscillating. It's just like you got these 4 people in a vicinity who all weigh about 300 pounds or close to it, and a huge weight, and they're all going up and down. And it's just like, I remember that like it was yesterday. And so anyways, we were banished from doing Olympic lifts up in the nicer weight room, and we had to go to this dungeony, like it was like a hallway. But that was the best training and it was a thing where actually if you go down there, you're going to do all your big lifts there, where you're going to squat and you're going to clean it first. And we're going to just figure out some different ways to play around with the cleans and the squats that we usually do. And that was some of the best training that we ever did. And ever since then too, I thought, man, like this would be a lot better if like they just took away half the weight room every year. Just like, all right, we go around the weight room, we just pick like, 20 things. You can't use any of this. You can only use this, and this. And how much better could it be,
I'm my first year as a coach, when we went into the field house, Coach Mon wanted them to lift. Watch him lift and help the throwers. All we had were one bar, 45s and 25s. We didn't have any 10s, 5s, 2.5s, just 45s. Am I right? Or is it 30? Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And so, you have a freshman lifting and a senior lifting. So we had, the 135 snatches versus 205 snatches. And in between, so we do a set of like 6x3 in the power snatch or something like that. And then go over to the nets and throw. Come back, they'd have to clean it. We do sets of 5 in the front squat. Go back in the nets and do a drill. I look back on that, and that's, I think, when I became a better coach. I tell you one thing, when you don't have a ton of options in with the bar and you got a chance to throw, that was the best coaching in my career. But just like you said, and it was cold in there. Oh my God. Oh, it was cold. it was cold. But, all those throwers became big time.
Yeah, that's like the training. There's a reason I think that archetype or mythology of Rocky, just you watch that and it's like, yeah, if you've been in that any type of, deprived training situation, what that feels like. And so I I wish I could have had a video of all those, could have got some music going on. I would have loved to see that training you did back in the day.
Well, we get those every so often on Facebook or Instagram. These guys will post these European videos of these great facilities and these guys doing all this high-end stuff. And I always want to write on it, Yeah, that guy there, he got beat by an American thrower who did clean, squat, bench, and jump. That was the whole weight workout and threw. You had a multi-billion-dollar facility. This guy was training in a basement. The guy in the basement won, and that happens a lot. Am I saying we need to get rid of top end? No. But I'll tell you one thing. You come train with me at my gym, my home gym here. It's in my garage. In the summer, it's hot. In the winter, it's freezing. And we learn more about training because of the lack of things than most people will with their perfect air conditioning. I mean, I got a great gym over here I could belong to. It's a 24/7 gym. And, I watch people go in there and they've got $1 billion worth of equipment, and they spend half their time getting their playlist on their phone and then foam rolling. They don't train.
Yeah.
So my gym, when today was -1. Yeah, you don't spend a lot of time on the ground foam rolling. I'll tell you that.
It'd be hard to be on your phone if it's -1 on your thumbs. It'd be
and your battery runs out so fast.
Oh yeah, it'd be a nightmare.
It is, yeah.
Oh man. So with that, like the minimalism, I wanted to ask you about kettlebells too, because one of the questions I had was like kettlebells with athletes. But I imagine, did the throwing? Because I know you'd mixed kettlebells with throwing too. Like, did that come kind of out of the same deal? Like, I didn't have that many things to train with, or just kind of playing with the implement and finding how it mixed up?
The first time when I brought out first to the field, I bought this great pickup truck. God, I love that thing. I had to get rid of it, but I loved it. And I used to bring my barbell and some lighter plates. I think 25 bumpers and 10s, because I was working with high school kids. And we brought it out, so in between throws, you might go take 10 full turns, 10 snatches, 5 half turns, some power cleans, that kind of thing. But later, when I got my first kettlebell, which was a 28 kilo kettlebell, I brought it out with me to this throwing area. It's called T2. And I suddenly realized that this was perfect because I could keep it behind the seat of my car, or actually strap it. You put it in a safety belt, strap it in the back seat, and I could carry that one thing out and do. And by the way, it's a little heavy. 28K is a little heavy for throwing drills, but you certainly could do throwing drills with lighter kettlebells. Probably you wouldn't want to go more than 16 kilos would be that's 35 pounds. I mean, if you had a 10 or 12, you'd probably do some, whip throws with the, backwards throw, head throws, side stuff, just for fun. And don't, I used to have that great video and that article when the German throwers came here, and they had a kettlebell throwing decathlon. The javelin guy from back east had it. But you put the kettlebell in your foot, you throw it for distance, and the coach measured it.
Really? Kettlebell in your foot for distance? That sounds like an old Russian high jump drill or something.
You hook your foot inside the handle, and then you throw it. Yeah, it was just ridiculous. It was 12 different drills to measure. And I don't know if I'd go so far as to measure, but just having fun, playing catch with the kettlebell would be kind of fun. In fact, those guys who do kettlebell juggling, they literally throw and catch it back and forth. Tell you one thing, that will keep your focused, because when you got a 16 kilo thing made of iron coming out your face, you better stay focused.
Yeah, we talk about trying to keep athletes in the moment. That'd be a pretty good way to find a flow state, hopefully pretty quick. For better, for worse, hopefully you're ready for it. But I've done that stuff. My friend Corey Schlesinger does that. He was at Stanford, he's at Phoenix Suns now. He doesn't do it a lot with the, kind of those high end guys. You probably don't want to be, throwing kettlebells at each other. But
I know Corey Schlesinger, don't
I mean, maybe.
I want to say we hung out at was he used to be at UC Santa Barbara, maybe?
I don't know. I don't know that he was there.
Okay, but maybe it's a Stanford connection.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sometimes, I get confused on names and stuff. I get. Yeah.
Yeah. The key, we did that when I did a podcast with him one of the first times I met him, and I always like to do workouts with people before we actually sit down and talk. It's kind of like this. I don't know. I just feel like podcasts are better when you share a workout first. And we did a lot of kettlebell juggling. We were doing it throwing it up and trying to do a 360 and catch it, which might have not been a good idea, but it was it was fun. I loved it. I had a blast.
When I first learned kettlebells, that was part of the curriculum. I learned all those. Sadly, I don't do them as much as I used to, and it is a skill that diminishes without practice. Yeah, do the one where you throw it like this and it flips and you catch the handle, then you flip it like this and it goes like a helicopter. So you got the somersaulter, you got the helicopter, yeah, between the legs and all that. Oh, yeah.
When I used to, the warm-ups I used to have my athletes do at Cal, sometimes I eventually just got bored of saying, do this many sets of this and this many sets of this. At one point, it's just like, hey, here's a kettlebell, just play around with it for a minute, and then you go to the next station. And I would make people be creative. I said, do something with it you haven't done before. And so that I enjoyed just seeing what people would do and just trying to find, hey, like this isn't your sport, you're a swimmer, you're something else, but just do something different with this thing and find a new way to use it.
Figure eight between the legs, like that. When the basketball players do that dribble between they make figure eights. Weird thing about that figure eight is it takes about a second to teach, and yet people will stay in that position doing that. I don't know if it's because it's a beautiful movement, which what calisthenics basically means, or is it just I think maybe anytime you do this with the hands. Because I'm sure it's neurological because all the nerves that run. I've watched people just deep dive into that, and they're like you said, they're in another place. They're not in the middle of the weight room at Cal. They're in a happy place somewhere. Happy Gilmore place.
Yeah, I like. It takes me back to what you said about the hands and feet too. We don't training the hands in an elastic way and just being able to do that kind of thing it's valuable. All right. So I did want to ask, I wanted to come back to this because you said it and I wanted to ask this before we finished. And you were just talking about the art of relaxation. And I remember, I think you had written, it may have been an easy strength. I had forgotten, but the idea of if you did your throwing practice and maybe you did 20 throws and then set a cone that's easy and try to expend the least effort possible to hit that cone. I love that. Could you just share a little bit more about that and kind of how you work that in?
We used to call it the Soviet drill, and honestly, I don't know why. It's also called range throwing. But what you do, Boris Zachuck, the first man to throw over 80 meters in the hammer, became a Canadian coach. This was his big drill. But so you go in and you have and you can either do it for the day. So this is my PR for the day. It's my best throw. And it's, we'll make it big. Or your personal record, 200 feet. Okay. So it's 200 feet. So you put a cone, or actually the best, as I discovered from John Powell, is a garbage can, a plastic garbage can. And it's only at 160. So it's 80% of my best. And I can't throw over it. And the nice what John did for me was by aiming for the garbage can, trying to drop it in the garbage can. Sorry, my phone, someone's calling. Trying to drop it in the garbage can completely changes the way your brain works. What's weird is that, so it's 80%. The idea is this. It gets so easy. It is so easy to throw that 160, and it is. 160 is so short that you have to rethink everything. But you're doing the full turn, and you just feel like you're gliding in there. Well, okay, so finally you get one to drop it, and then we set it to 165. And it's weird because all of a sudden, what happened then is this. The idea is this. So here's your max. How am I to get my max? I cleaned 400. How am I going to get to 405? Well, that's pretty hard. But if I try to make 320 feel easier, if it feels lighter than it used to be, this is the whole easy strength foundation, by the way. If it feels easier, can't we imagine that our 100% went up? I learned this from John Powell. Instead of constantly chasing 100%, trying to get to 101%, gently nudge 80% up. Get underneath it. Just nudge it up. And if you nudge your 80% up, we can imagine, and it's very often true, that your 100% went up. What's amazing about the Soviet drill is how hard it is for an elite athlete to re-engage that 80%. But what's also fascinating is that 3 or 4 minutes into it, so here you got this normal sectors like this, nice wide sector. Now you got a garbage can that's just basically a hole out there. And they completely changed their thinking process so that they don't need a sector this long. They need literally a chalk line of a sector is all they need. And they're dropping the discus. I mean, it's weird to look at. So in my office here, in 10 throws, if my desk here would be the garbage can, in 10 throws, every one of the throws lands inside my office. So instead of having, and then pretty soon you got the ring, you got the garbage can out at 170, 180, and they're dropping it in that same office, laughing between throws. And what we're arguing is that we've just changed the mental relationship with the distance. Sometimes, if you can do it, and you got to be careful, this has to be a micro dose thing. But play the drill, make up some kind of, if the first person to get in the garbage can gets something either really good, like I'll take y'all out. If someone does it, I'll take everybody out for pizza, which, throwers is always a win, or, a milkshake or whatever the hell. And so they're all focused on trying to win the garbage can. And at the end, say, okay, let's just let them go. Okay, let's just see how far I can throw. There are times, if done right, you'll get a lifetime best out of that drill. Not every time, but the Catholic high school record in the United States is still held by one of my athletes. And basically, it was a garbage can drill kind of throw. Just wanted to get an opener in there. 214.9 with the effort of a 170 throw.
That's it. Ever since I read that portion of the book, the first thing I did was, I remember high jump. Like if I, about the time I might have been jumping, my jump wasn't great, maybe 6'6", 6'8", and I would put the bar to 5'10" and just effortless, just try to make it effortless. Unfortunately, it's not a target, so you don't get that dopamine hit that you hit the target, but just trying to make it. I'd spent my whole life almost like, get as high over the bar as you can every throw. Get as high as you can. Just what if we just change the context? And it's almost like the same thing on some level. I feel like when you get hurt, it helps you to like train yourself in a new way, because you have to engage with feeling, and you've never done that before. It's because you're kind of testing it out. It's like, oh, is this okay? Is this okay? Is this okay? And yeah,
throwing left-handed, left hand. It's the same idea. It's the same movement, same ring, same sector, radically different worldview. I don't know if this is a good idea or a bad idea. With the jumpers, the high jumpers and long jumpers, we had those nice solid boxes, the short, low ones with the rubber on top.
Oh yeah. And
you put up you have the person jump. Like in your case, you went 6'6", so maybe start at 5'6". But did you come off your left foot off the ground or your right foot?
Yeah, left foot.
Okay, so as you run up, we would have the box at where your left foot would be. And then you come up and you slam the box. Well, you're cheating, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're coming off this much higher. So 5'6" was just a joke. In fact, it's almost dangerous because you go so much farther. Like the pit might not be big enough.
Oh yeah. You really can get up off those things for sure.
Yeah, and then so it's the same idea. So yes. But that's one way to get yourself loaded down on the high jump. And by the way, it works on the long jump too. The only problem with the long jump is the box has to be secured somehow, maybe with sandbags or something, because it will kind of tilt. It'll hit and tilt. So it has to have a little bit of something on it. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah, if you're coming with that horizontal speed, and it's got to be kind of,
it kind of rocks up on you. You need something to kind of, doesn't have to be much, but that might be a way to high jump this drill, but here's the fun thing. And someone's going to say, well, that's not the way it's done at the track meet. I know, but what I want you to do is I want you to go to that track meet with a skill set of maybe 10 or 12 different ways to think differently. You have 10 other, I know what I mean. I don't know if
Yeah, it's almost like mental strategies. I have this mental schema. It's almost like here's a setting, here's a setting, here's a setting. I think I know what you're saying.
I mean, I want you to go to track meet, and if you hurt your left foot, know that you can still win jumping off your right foot because you've been practicing going off the other foot. My discus throws, guys, you could win this left-handed. And I'm not putting down the competition. I'm just saying you can win today left-handed. And I want you to, if things happen, you've got an extra set of tools. I love this kind of thing because you've got to be able to give monkey brain something to keep it busy while you're trying to compete, and give it more strategies.
Yeah, without question. I remember I used to do, back when I was coaching, I think I was like 27, 28, and I had this guy who just was learning javelin, had just been learning it, and I had a lot of kind of drills that I felt like were similar to the way you use kettlebells with the throws, and then did tons of range throws. And he was really getting ticked that I wouldn't let him throw further. But he was getting up to about 150 in the meet, so not bad for college first year. And then he just, I don't know, I figured if I just stopped coaching him as much, I couldn't like keep track of him because I had a million other athletes. He just started throwing as far as he could every time, and he was throwing like 120, 125. It was just interesting, like how that happens with especially the throws.
Especially the throws, but that is, so what he was trying to do was, the idea you get from those movies, or the high, those commercials, where the black guy and the white guy high five each other because they drink a certain beverage that comes from the University of Florida. It's just, we're going to run a bunch of hills and we're going to win the state championship, and to win, we're going to run more hills. Well, boy, if we run more hills, so you ran a lot of hills, but no one on the team can catch the football or knows how to tackle. So you're in better condition than us, but you lose. And I think that's, so when you strive to throw the javelin or hammer farther, physics rewards you with the worst throw.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Physics and physiology. You lose the snap, and you lose the where the implement should be. You're trying to gun it instead of flick it.
I've even done that with sprinting recently. Is a guy named Sam Portland from the UK has a thing called speed gate golf, where he has the fly, like the timing gate set up, and instead of going max, you go like 10-20% less, and you just try to do it with some like technical nuance in mind, or ease, relax. And he has so many guys doing a progression like that ended up setting PRs, or older athletes who were coming close to their old bests. And so I started doing that with an athlete who, and I would use it to trick athletes into PRing on the session a lot of times. So I'm like, hey, just run. I'd throw out a time that was like 5% or 10% easier, and they would run like a PR or close to it, and I would see that a lot. And so I'd always try to use that to trick people, even in running. I don't say it probably happens often in running as throwing, but it definitely was something that stuck with me, and it was like way I coach on the spot in many cases.
If you have a good kettlebell swing, you can tell the person, hit it at half, and then say 40%, and then say 2/3, and then say almost, and change so don't say 50, 60, 70, say half, 3/4, so that the brain goes, okay. And what's weird is they're really doing kettlebell swings right. You can't see any difference, but the person swinging to be like, that was the one.
Huh.
Oh yeah. Because the perception by the athlete is often really wrong. They're probably swinging every one of them about the same, but if you give them monkey brain something to play with, half versus 70%. So on swing number 1, half. Swing number 2, give me 7. Give me a max effort. Go 30%. Go 1/3. Monkey brain jumps in and it's trying to do all this work, and the hips and the hips are going boom, and the elbows catching it, and the lats are throwing it back down. So no, I think there's some wisdom in that drill, a lot of wisdom. Try also, tell them 9/10. Try 9/10 and try to come up with a word like, a technical term with near max speed or something like that. High knee lift with near max speed. I don't know what near max is. I just made it up. But to watch them do it, it will be interesting because it's getting monkey brain out of the formula.
Yeah, I was just reading. I read the Mark Manson sends out Monday newsletters, and he wrote a bit about perception. How like if they had like Coke was drank in a white can, and they're terrible because the perception of it's like, oh, what is this? They expect it to be something different, but if you drink coffee out of a white cup, you perceive it to be more flavorful. And so I was just thinking, how do I set up the perception in coaching? And I love that.
And you could even, I would even have a color chart, even one more. As the athlete's getting close, flash, I don't know, green is top speed, yellow is medium, don't have red. Some variation of color between them, and just flash an orange sign, and they have to go.
Yeah, so that's awesome. Yeah, thank you. So I know we've gone a long time, Dan, on these, and so I'll let you go here. But I've had a lot of fun talking to you. I appreciate all your insight and wisdom, and it's just great to catch up on these topics.
I probably hit your site. I get your newsletter, and I hit your site all the time. Like I said, I've talked to your Jav Lab guy a lot. He's a keeper. That's some good stuff there. Right? I got the right site?
Yeah. Javelin. No, Jake Clark set it up, and Kevin Foster's done some work there, and it's been a great project.
Your site is great to read. I'm a big fan. Anytime I can be a service for you guys, let me know, because you guys are doing good work.
Well, thank you so much, Dan. And I'm excited for the new Easy Strength to come out so I can finally get a print copy. And I appreciate it again.
Hey, what we'll do, we'll just for you, I'll make sure you get a signed print copy, okay?
Oh, that would be awesome. I would love that. Thank you so much. Thanks for tuning in for another show. We appreciate you guys being here with us. And if you enjoyed the show, you can help us out by leaving us a rating or review on iTunes, Stitcher, whatever you're listening to. We'd really appreciate that. We will see you guys next week with another great guest. Have a good one.